Hi, so I'm Lexa. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a southern state of the US. This all started in the couple weeks leading up to April 18th, 2023 in Stamford, Texas. Stamford is a small town, approximately 2 hours outside of Dallas. I was in Texas to build my real estate business, and I was also in Texas to own my own land and build a tiny home on that land. So in Stamford, Texas, I was already working on my project of one of my pieces of property. I had three in that particular town. And I had found an extremely inexpensive way to own this property, to buy it. And I had a building, basically a shell of a building on top of the land. And so I was doing a do-it-yourself project to complete my tiny home. And at this time, I was traveling around to my different properties to manage them. And I was living the life of an entrepreneur. So I was in Stamford, Texas, and a man named Gil Lopez. I met him around a month before April 18th, 2023. I'm in town. It seemed normal enough. I actually met him at his workplace. So this man works at the Hamilton Avenue Allsups in Stamford, Texas. I met him at his workplace, and I did a little bit of research on him before I even felt comfortable socializing with him, in the sense that I knew where he worked, I knew where he lived. Where he lived was extremely close to my property. I socialized with this man 3 times. We didn't date, we didn't kiss or anything like that. I socialized with him. The final time that I socialized with this man, he let me know a couple of things. Number one, he told me that he was born into the Bonanno crime family, which is a mafia crime family. The other thing that happened that last time that I've socialized with this man is that he took a picture of me when he thought that I would not notice. Those two things taken in combination were enough for me to say, I want nothing to do with this man whatsoever. Because I had already been accustomed to traveling around and just living life as a single woman, I was accustomed to how to take care of myself and stay safe. So because of those two subtle things, especially, when you hear a camera click, I didn't say, oh, there's no way I heard that. I knew what I heard. So to me, that was enough to be suspicious and to try to see ahead, like why would someone do something like that? On the day of April 18th, 2023, I blocked this man, Gil Lopez's number. He only ever had a Google Voice number for me. So I was already taking safety measures for myself. But because I was so suspicious and I had never come across anyone who had claimed to have been born in a crime family, I left the town entirely and headed back to my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was traveling back home to keep myself safe. The night of April 18th, 2023, this man and one of his criminal connections broke into my car while I was already asleep, drugged me in my sleep, raped me in my sleep, physically raped me, and videoed the rape. I found semen on the sheets of where I had been sleeping in my car. I found a white residue of the latch on my car door. It was like a Vaseline type of substance. So that must have been something that they used to slip into the door to forcibly open the door in my sleep without waking me. After the night of the first rape, April 18th, during that time, I was traveling back to North Carolina, and I already noticed people stalking me. One man, when I stopped at a rest stop, approached me and talked to me. I was suspicious. And because of that, I listened to what he had to say. This man knew where I was headed. He said, oh, so where are you headed? But because I was already suspicious, I said to him, I'm headed to Columbia, South Carolina. Never said Charlotte or anything like that. I had Texas license plates. At the end of this very short conversation, this man said to me, so when are you going to be in Charlotte? I never told you I was going to be in Charlotte. So I knew at that point that this man must be connected to this Gil Lopez. Now, I will say very quickly that in the time leading up to this, with me traveling around Texas, it became clear that trafficking was a problem. And it became clear that these traffickers they actually placed tracking devices on the vehicles of whoever they're trying to stalk. Um, throughout that trip from Texas to North Carolina after April 18th, I became aware that I was being stalked, and I had never experienced anything like this with a group of people stalking me. Once I realized that I had been raped, I stopped at a hospital. I asked for a rape kit. So I get to North Carolina. I'm still being stalked. At this point, I had said, okay, I've never experienced anything like this. I want nothing to do with it. And I said to myself, organized crime, and I want absolutely nothing to do with it. Therefore, I'm not even going to continue my own plan of just having my own land and building my home in Texas. So at that time, I did drive again to return to Texas to get my things. When I returned to Texas, it was extremely clear that people were treating me differently in town. This is a very small town, but it became clear that whatever Gil Lopez was connected to something bigger than I had ever seen, something more dangerous than I had ever seen. I returned to Texas to get my things, just the bare minimum of things that I needed to get out of my building, my belongings, all the deeds to my properties. I didn't want to just leave all that in Texas. And throughout that, I continued to be stalked. And, at that time, I'm having to put together the flashback of seeing Gil Lopez outside my car with a flashlight during the rape, thinking, so why would these people do this? Because they're pornographers. I'm personally against all pornography, but that's aside from the point, because these people are doing this totally illegally. I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself. I have not been connected to any of this. As soon as I have become suspicious of someone that they're connected to this, I break all contact. That's been the case from the beginning. From that point on, I was being stalked heavily in Texas. I was trying to figure out what to do. I went to the police in Texas, and basically it became clear that the captain of the Stanford Police Department is connected to Gil Lopez. They refused to take the report of my rape. So that's the local police department. When I went to the hospital, what I said is that I have significant reason to believe that I was broken into, drugged, and raped in my sleep, basically. And I begged them for a rape kit. And I also asked them for prophylactic drugs to prevent sexually transmitted infections. And what happened is that a lot of the times in the context of hospitals, unfortunately, any normal person would think, yes, let me go get a rape kit. Let me get all the evidence I can. Unfortunately, the real experience of when you actually go to the hospital and say these things is quite different. They actually did not do a rape kit. I had to basically in the hospital beg for both these things, the rape kit and the prophylactic drugs, which prevent STI contraction if you take them at the right time. I had to beg them multiple times. They did not do a rape kit. While I was still in Texas in this time in late April, I stopped at the Corsicana local police department as I was leaving back from Stanford to go back to North Carolina with my things that I had gotten out of my building. And that was where I said, I basically tried to tell that officer all that I knew, but I had called the Stanford Police Department while I was in the lobby at that police department. And the captain of the Stanford Police Department demanded that I hand the phone over to the officer that I was about to give my testimonial to before I gave my testimony. I don't know exactly what he said to him, but it's clear that he said things to discredit me, and he absolutely refused to take my report. The Corsicana officer did say this sounds like a federal case. So at that point, because I knew I was being stalked in the vehicles, the next place that I was going to go to stay and just try to be safe with Salt Lake City, because it would involve me driving across the country from Texas to Utah for a very long drive. I made the judgment call that because these people were physically following me on the interstate, and not just one car, multiple cars, I made the judgment call that I would not drive at nighttime, still, in absolute fear for my safety. I took a plane from Texas to Utah. On that plane ride, 3 men who were not sitting together, who were all wearing the same color sweatshirt, which I know that's a small detail. That wasn't the first thing that clued me into them. Towards the end, they were signaling toward each other. There were other clues that made me suspicious initially of one of them. And then when we got off the plane in Utah, they were signaling to each other, even though they were trying to make it clear that they were not actually traveling together. But it was clear that these men were sent to stalk me as well. Once I got to Utah, I went to the police there as well. In multiple instances, I made the choice to go from Salt Lake City to a more favorable position for myself, which would be Charlotte, North Carolina, my hometown. When I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, it was clear that these people had also stalked me there. They were, I was in a house staying with family temporarily. It became clear that these people were stalking me there. And so knowing that these people use the cover of darkness to break into wherever I'm sleeping and drug and rape me in my sleep, I did stay up and keep all the lights on in the house and watch over the house at nighttime. Now that detail has been unfairly used against me, but I ask anyone who thinks that behavior sounds strange to ask themselves, what would they do if they were me? If they had been repeatedly broken into, drugged, and raped in my sleep, at this point already having gone to the police multiple times. There's one important detail that I skipped over. While I was still in Texas, I went to the FBI on April 27th, 2023, and told them what I knew. I spent probably 2 hours. I showed up at the FBI office. I physically showed up. And then another thing is I physically brought the sheets with the semen on them from April 18th, 2023, which is hard evidence. I brought that to the FBI office. I said, please take this evidence. They refused to take it. So back to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I got an apartment. I actually sold my car. There's a lot of different factors here. It became clear that my car was being stalked still. I actually returned to Texas just to pick up my car because remember, I had parked it at an airport. So after I had been back in Charlotte for approximately 3 weeks, I believe, don't quote me on that one, I traveled back. I took measures to do it in the most secure way. At the time, I was not aware that they were already tracking my phone. I was not fully aware of that. So I took every measure that I thought I could, rented a car to drive back to Texas because I figured, okay, I know I've been stalked in airports, so let me change up my strategy here to try to keep myself safe without just leaving my car there, right? I actually had another truck and my car. I didn't want to leave both my cars along with all 9 of my properties in Texas and just cede everything, right? I have to go get my car. So I traveled back. I did travel back to Texas to get my car from that airport. And in doing that, I did have to stop at a hotel to sleep at some point. I was broken into, drugged, and raped in my sleep May 23rd, 2023 at this hotel in McGregor, Texas. What I found, and people can do their own investigations into this stuff if they're interested in organized trafficking, is that there are employees of these hotels, cab companies, Uber and Lyft, and these different legitimate organizations and businesses. They have certain individuals who really do actually work there, but who are consciously in on the rape trafficking operation. So again, it's not everyone who works at the hotel, but the problem is quite rancid. There are a lot, they already have a huge existing network. So in my case, I noticed that as soon as they broke in, drugged, and raped me in my sleep once, they're planning to do it again. And I'm clearly on this list that they use this network to then continue to break in, drug, and rape in the sleep. The other thing is that, from the very beginning, I went to police. From the very beginning, pretty much after a few days, I went to FBI. So from early on, these people, these organized traffickers who are used to trying to control their victims by any methods, again, something I've inferenced and researched, it became clear that they were not going to be able to control me. I was never going to be part of any of this. I was going to do whatever I could to expose this illegal activity and this immoral activity. So from the beginning, I will say, and it's not to overstate anything, but I will say that they wanted to try to pull out all the stops, so to speak. Obviously at that time, I knew that there were corrupt police officers in on this by this time, but I did not realize what the TI, the Targeted Individual Program, was. I did not realize what the fusion centers were. I've inferenced that they'll try to use the networks created by the targeted individual program along with the networks of the organized rape trafficking. And there's a lot of overlap in those two, but they will use the targeted individual programs resources, the people who are working to target innocent Americans and, all across the world, target innocent civilians and torture us. They're using the resources from that TI program in almost an unofficial sense as much as they can, because they know that what they are doing is so highly illegal. When I say so illegal, what I'm talking about is the RICO Act that was passed in 1970 in the US. It was particularly written so that prosecutors could prosecute organized crime, particularly the mafia. So what I've been victim to is absolutely prosecutable under that law. I was very grateful that I had the support of my family to get me an apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina. I insisted on getting an alarm system in my apartment. Just to give part of an example of what an uphill battle this is and how to advocate. When the man came to install that expensive alarm system that immediately calls the police, once the alarm system is armed and I've punched in my code, if any door is opened, it calls the police immediately within like 2 or 3 seconds. I insisted that they also put it on the windows. Just knowing how thorough my attackers were by this point, I didn't want to leave any chance. This man was not in on it, but just for an example, he's like, I assure you that no one's going to break into the window, or you're not going to need that. I said, look, I promise you there's a good reason for it. So during those 2.5 months, from June to around the end of August 2023, I was not broken into, drugged, and raped in my sleep, which is only due to that alarm system. However, I was still being stalked, and I knew that I was being stalked because my attackers sent one man to say something to me that lined up with the exact words that man in Georgia who had stopped at the gas station. They sent that man to say exact words that other man had said and nothing else. I ignored that man completely and kept walking. They want me to know and make the connection because they want me to be scared. At that time, I was just trying to live my life. I had already gone to the FBI and other police at least 4 other times by this point. And so I was just trying to keep myself safe and move on. So I'm going to share a specific, and the reason for that is that it's important people understand just how evil these rape traffickers are and how evil this program. So after 2.5 months of being in that apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, my mother and I went on a vacation. She wanted to go on the vacation. And, at that point, I decided to go on the vacation with her. Anyone should be entitled to live their life freely, right? It became clear to me on that vacation that these horrible, evil people broke in, drugged, and raped both me and my mother on this vacation. They made it extremely clear that they were stalking me on the roads once again. The first night that they broke in, drugged, and raped both me and my mother in our sleep, we were in a hotel room. When we woke up, the window was unlocked. It had not been unlocked at any point. All the windows had been locked. And it was taken in tandem with these other physical symptoms that I already knew to look for. On that vacation, there were also multiple vehicles with Texas tags that were clearly stalking me. Now, people might hear that and say, well, a Texas tag doesn't prove anything, but it's a pattern. Multiple Texas vehicles stalking me, literally doing circles around the street that I was walking on in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It was clear that they were stalking me. I was sitting on the porch and leaving the lights on to watch the house at nighttime while she slept. In one instance, among many other details, towards the very end of this trip, a car drove by the main road of this little complex and shot shots into the air of a gun. In one instance, we woke up and my mother's phone had been cracked and totally broken, and it hadn't been broken when we went to sleep. There was a man who apparently worked for the complex that we were renting this house from, and I caught him literally peeping at our window, listening into our conversation. There are so many other details I haven't included. At this point, like right before I sold my car, I actually went to a private investigator. I hired a private investigator to try to find the tracking device on my vehicle. Unfortunately, during the process of that, it became clear that this man was somehow connected to the organized traffickers. I had looked up private investigator on my phone, and the first one that came up, I called, and I very briefly said, I've been broken into, drugged, and raped in my sleep. I've gone to the police and nothing has helped. I need someone to try to find a tracking device on my vehicle. He referred me to another private investigator office in Charlotte, NC, that deals with this stuff typically. The person who's known as being an expert on this type of stalking is actually being either paid off or otherwise controlled to be a part of this and to feed back information to the operatives running this operation. I know that based on specific things that this private investigator said to me. I've explained these specifics. I actually recorded hours of testimony on YouTube, where I go into extreme, intricate detail, because I want people to know not only what they've done to me, but I want women to understand how bad this is. So now we're getting to the last week of August 2023. This is an important week in my testimony. The Targeted Individual Program makes use of so much technology that the average citizen doesn't even know exists, but it's being coordinated by humans at the top who are rape traffickers, who are profiting off the rapes, along with the other torture. I also believe that the answer to justice and for no one to be raped and for no one to be tortured, no innocent civilian to be tortured, is in a human answer. So I showed up at the FBI office the next morning, at the FBI office in Charlotte, North Carolina, that Tuesday of the last week of August 2023. And there's like a preliminary building you have to pass through that has the metal detectors. The FBI have employed this private security firm. The name of the security firm in this case is Paragon Security. They subcontract Paragon Security to have the two security guards at the preliminary place with the metal detectors before you get into the building. So I showed up to the FBI office. I insisted to speak with an agent. They insisted that I give my testimony in that small building with the metal detector. There was a man, a security guard who worked for Paragon Security, who said things to me that it was clear were very subtle threats. They try to make threats against family or anything that they think that I care about, right? To try to discourage me from testifying against these organized criminals. I gave my testimony that first day for 2.5 hours, but these two security guards are hearing my entire testimony when technically they don't have the security clearance to hear the information that an FBI agent has the security clearance to hear. So I figured out that this man had been sent to contain me, this security guard. I also have significant reason to believe that after I left that first day at the FBI, that he most likely tried to say things to the FBI agent that I had given my testimony to try to discredit me immediately. So once I put that together that night, I said to myself, I'm not going to leave it up to chance. I've already been through this once. I'm not going to leave it up to chance that nothing come of this again. It's already so important and urgent, and my safety. And now they've already done this to both me and my mother. I'm going to show up at the FBI office again, you know? So I encourage people to not take that out of context and to ask themselves what they would have done if they had been victim to this. I went back to the FBI office the next morning. Didn't take up a whole bunch of time, but I asked to speak to another FBI agent. The first FBI agent's name was Chase that first day. The second FBI agent's name was Desiree. So Desiree is technically the human trafficking contact for the Charlotte FBI field office. So I had to show up, and they did let me into the building this time. I spent about 30 or 35 minutes giving her more of the testimony that I had not had the chance to give Chase the previous day. And she made it clear that she would be my contact. I strongly know that this woman actually believed my testimony. At this time, once I'm leaving the FBI office, the gang stalking is ramping up. That second day, the Paragon security employee who I had deduced was in on this and connected to Gil Lopez was not working that day. Third day, I showed up, and that same man, he was working the front desk again. When he saw me, he was very surprised. He's like, "Who are you here to speak to?" I said, "My contact." He said, "Oh crap, you were here yesterday?" Like he was not happy that I had been there the day that he was not working, right? He wasn't expecting that because he was sent to contain me. At this time, they were ramping up the gang stalking. They were sending multiple cars with no license plates to stalk me in my neighborhood as I'm walking around. And again, they're doing that now. Remember the 2.5 months that I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, in that neighborhood where they didn't break in, drug, and rape me in my sleep. I had been stalked, but the stalking was not this heavy. They ramped back up the stalking, for a combination of reasons, but obviously to try to prevent me from testifying, right? To try to intimidate me out of it. So that's also contributing to the sense of urgency I'm having about stopping these people's criminal activity and rightfully putting them in prison where they belong, just to get them to leave me alone. Showed up that third day, talked to her briefly, this time again in the small building where the man who works for Paragon Security, who I had already correctly deduced was sent to try to contain me. It's not going to work on his terms the way he wanted it to. And at that time, I said to her, when we were in the small building, and again, this man is overhearing this. So I said to her, "Desiree, don't you think that if someone says to you something like, you shouldn't have been socializing with someone you don't know," speaking about Gil Lopez, which is, so this man, this Paragon employee, the first day that I had been there, he had said to me a victim blaming remark, which is not the only reason that I knew that he was sent for me, but it's one of the supporting things. I said, "Desiree, don't you think that if someone said something like, oh, well, you shouldn't have been socializing with Gil Lopez, someone you don't know, don't you think that would have been victim blaming?" I said this right in front of the Paragon employee, and she said yes. And then I got up, I was in the building, and I pointed at the Paragon employee and I said, "That man said that to me the first day I came here, and you weren't here to hear it." And she immediately said, "Landon, I'm sorry that happened. My first name is Landon. My name is Landon Alexa Rice. I have nothing to hide. My middle name is Lexa. I've always gone by it." She said, "Landon, I'm sorry. I consider that a violation, and I'll report it." And she believed me on that too. The next day, I once again brought the sheets with the semen from the night of the first rape, April 18th, 2023. I said, I brought these to you could see the semen physically. I said, "I have it in my car. Will you please take the sheets, because it's very clear evidence. It will absolutely tie back to my rapist. I'm not even sexually active. There's no chance it's anyone but the rapist." People can be sexually active, and it doesn't mean they can't be a victim of rape, but I wasn't even sexually active at the time. That shouldn't matter. But unfortunately, because of the victim blaming and sexism, frankly, I know that it is a factor. So anyways, I said, "Can you please take the sheets?" Once again, they said, "We can't take the sheets." Concrete and tangible evidence that I had, which is why I was so gung-ho about them taking it. I did go to the FBI office a fourth time, only because of the urgency of this, only because I had significant reason to believe my life was at risk, in addition to my nightly safety, because of the gang stalking that they were ramping up outside of the FBI office. Just to give some more background, it became clear through direct experience that these organized traffickers, these pimps, these rapists, their first tactic is to illegally place a tracking device on the vehicle of whoever they're trying to stalk. How do I know that? Because in 2 instances, tracking devices had been placed on my vehicle while in Texas by strangers. The first time was in late 2022. My phone randomly gave me a message that basically an AirTag was detected moving with me, and it showed me a red line on the map of where my car had gone that day. I made a big fuss about it, and whoever had tried to do that figured out that it wasn't going to work on me, and they backed off. And in the second instance, it was a similar situation. Creepy men who do this totally illegally and totally non-consensually And it just speaks to how bad this problem is in Texas. They're getting away with it every single day. They are placing tracking devices on vehicles illegally. You don't have to do anything to become involved with them. All you have to do is be a single woman. So you don't have to do anything to put yourself in a bad position, which is what most people think of. All you have to do is be someone they want to rape for whatever reason that may be. I said to Desiree, who was the human trafficking contact at the FBI, who did believe me, and who I was going to try to build a case against these traffickers with, because I'm against rape. You know, you can't just do this to people. This is totally illegal. I said to her, look, I have no doubt that this man, this Paragon employee, is in on this rape trafficking organized criminal syndicate. If you follow him right now, look into his phone and follow him, I absolutely guarantee you that we will find the evidence that he is reporting back to someone about me in particular, and whoever that someone is someone else who's in on this pimp rape program. I said, I guarantee it, we just got to do it now, you know? So because it became clear that I was not going to stop, and for all these other reasons, so that they could have access to my body, so that they could discredit me, so that they could prevent legitimate government intervention, I was falsely imprisoned in a psychiatric facility pretty much the next day after that. I was falsely imprisoned in a psychiatric facility in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was drugged and raped in my sleep multiple times in that facility. The second night that I was there, again, I woke up and found semen on the bed. In addition to finding the semen, I woke up with the physiological symptoms. I'll just say one of them now, which is blood, a lot of blood coming from my anus. I apologize. I won't be too gross, but you know, I'm trying to let people know how I know. On the second night that I was there at that facility, I demanded that I see a medical doctor and have a rape kit done. I went to them multiple times demanding this. It is illegal for them to refuse medical doctor in a medical emergency, and it's absolutely a medical emergency to be raped. They broke the law in refusing me a medical doctor. I called the FBI office. I got one of the employees of these psychiatric facilities. They're called psych techs. So they have computers. So I actually had them look up the phone number of the FBI and as well as the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Sex Crimes Unit. I called the FBI and the CMPD Sex Crimes Unit from the phone of the psychiatric facility to say, I'm being illegally held in a psychiatric facility because I'm a victim of organized crime. I have been raped multiple times in this facility. They are refusing me a rape kit and refusing me a medical doctor. So I'm just going to sum up the rest of this really quickly. My attackers have stalked me all across the country at this point, including from beginning of October 2023 to now. I barricade doors, I secure doors and everything. They tamper with cameras. They've left semen other times. It all boils down to the fact that they're doing this with impunity because I know that I can't go to the police. I've gone to the police over 20 times, including 5 times to the FBI. How did that end up for me? So any reasonable person, I would ask anyone watching, if you had been a victim of this, you had gone to the police this many times, and it had only ended worse for you, what would you do? I encourage everyone who hears this, no matter where they're coming at it, to think about organized trafficking differently, to think of it in larger terms. A lot of the things we know about traffickers are true, but they're not the full picture when it comes to the organized crime coordinated by the Targeted Individual Program and the racketeers, the individual racketeers within the 3-letter agencies, the FBI and the CIA, et cetera, in the US, who are knowingly pimps, who are knowingly raping people, who are knowingly facilitating this pimping and raping and then using color of authority to contain the victims. We absolutely will be able to end this once and for all, totally legally and peacefully, with the support of the public. The public has to know what's going on. Once people know and understand, they are so against this. People hate, you know, I don't want the police, who are supposed to protect expect us to be the ones pimping and raping. I don't want this to be going on in my name as a citizen under the color of authority of police who are actually criminals. And the people have to know about this. That's the majority of people have to know about this and what's really happening. And once they do, they're against it. They despise it, rightfully so, because it's evil.